Serious and Silliness Outcast. Like, share, subscribe, and click that notification bell so that you get all the latest content. I have some great interviews coming up. I will be having Gene Borello coming up at the end of the month. I can't wait for that one. That one is going to be a great interview. But here I have something a little bit different for you. I have a very good friend named Matt GRANAHAN, and we also have a mutual friend, Larry MAZZA. Larry's been on my show several times. Matt has also been on my show several times. Larry, as everybody knows, is a former, made member of the mafia. He did time, and he got out of prison, and he's made a complete turnaround. He's a gym owner. He's a consultant in Hollywood. He actually is an author. The guy has made great strides in changing his life around, and he's extremely successful. Now, Matt, also a good friend. Matt is a former champion Greco-Roman wrestler, Olympic wrestler, and a professional wrestler, believe it or not. So these two guys teamed up, and they do this act together, and they do it in West Palm Beach in a club called Capone's. And it's a really nice club. It's very, very quaint, beautiful architecture, beautiful inside, great drinks, great food. And what they do, these guys, is they go in there, and you could buy tickets for a show, and the show is called The Night in the Life. So what happens is, first they open up with a singer. I believe the guy's name is Carlos Carr. And then what happens is Matt and Larry, they sit there and they tell stories about, their past and whatnot, about organized crime in New York and Florida and so on and so forth. And they interact with the audience. The audience gets to ask questions and so on and so forth. So in this video, what they're actually doing is they're discussing their act with another fellow named Dion Powell. Dion Powell is a lawyer, and he is also, I believe he's in politics as well. So what you're about to see is the actual restaurant that they do the act in, but then they actually, it's not the act itself, but they discuss the act with Dion. And what they're really trying to do is they're actually trying to have somebody film the act, and then they're going to try to get it on a streaming service like a Hulu or a Netflix or an Amazon Prime or something like that. So without further ado, Matt GRANAHAN, Larry MAZZA, Dion Powell at Capone's in West Palm Beach, Florida, discussing The Night in the Life. I hope you guys enjoy it. All right. Later, guys.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dion Powell, your community consultant, and I'm here with two great gentlemen in Florida. Right now, I'm in New York, and I'm going to introduce my good friend Matthew GRANAHAN, the King, Connecticut, who's going to bring up his special guest and give us a tour of this special venue and give us a little teaser of what may come to the future. Go ahead, your royalty.
Thank you, Dion Powell. First of all, I want to wish you a somewhat belated Happy New Year. I hope you and your friends and family had a great holiday season. And it's great to be here with you and my good friend Larry MAZZA, author of a fantastic book, The Life, and a man who's truly led the life. And I kind of want to open up in this regard. We are going to be doing a live show here from Capone's in West Palm Beach, a beautiful venue that your fans and fans of watching this podcast saw in the opener. Very old school, speakeasy type environment. And what we're putting together here is a show called A Night in the Life. And I want to open up now with you and your audience the way that I'll open up this show, which is to say that ironically, what started out as a secret society on the island where my own grandparents immigrated from now permeates every aspect of American culture. From movies, The Godfather, Goodfellas, television shows, The Sopranos, Wise Guy, to political events such as the Kennedy assassination, historical events, the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. There is no conversation on American history and popular culture that does not include the life. And I am joined by a man that has led that life, the author of the book, The Life, my good friend, Mr. Larry MAZZA.
Thank you so much, Matt. Your introductions are always over the top and incredible. And I'm humbled by the words you use when you describe me, but I thank you also.
Thank you.
And
Larry.
Dion, thanks for having me.
Thanks, gentlemen. Let us hear what you got to say, because even I'm eager to get my questions in. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, we talked about what got us here, and we're not going to waste time spending on that. But I have had the pleasure of having Larry on as a guest in Berman Law Group at our podcast studio I've done dozens of episodes of the Berman Team podcast. And Larry's episode that I did with my co-host, Brittany Garcia, is by far the most talked about and most watched episode. People love it. People love this mob genre. And I'm going to tell you, Dion, I was always hesitant to talk about this kind of stuff. I come from the combat sports world, the fight world, and I had a podcast years ago with Brian Snow, and we also had a terrestrial radio show on The Fan. Brian used to call the Cubs games out of Chicago. African-American gentleman, great broadcaster, the golden voice of Chicago. And years ago, I told Brian that I wanted to have a gentleman on our show, and this was way before anybody was doing all of these mob podcasts. But I wanted to have a gentleman on that was a great friend of a close relative of mine, and that was a gentleman by the name of Tony Napoli. And I tied him in with being a boxer because he was Tony Rio in his days as a boxer. And I got to do Tony's last interview. And that relative I spoke of was never somebody who would ever want to talk about the life. And he loved the interview even himself, because we did it in such a classy way, and we presented it in such a classy way. And these historic stories. Tony Knapp was, we're 90 years old when we had him on. And I then started interviewing Larry for the Hannibal TV. And this genre has exploded. And what we want to do, and I just want to say this before I pass it on to Larry, is give people an experience where they can suspend reality and they can listen to these stories. People love to hear these stories. And that is what A Night in the Life is all about. Right, Larry?
Yes, it is. We're also going to add entertainment music. There'll be a happy hour hors d'oeuvres. And at the end of the night, question and answers. And then the audience will get to schmooze with myself and other ex-gangsters or semi-retired gangsters or gangsters that have moved on for whatever reasons. So also two things. I met Matt because I own a gym. And originally you had the fight show.
Yes.
And I had a lot of kickboxers and things like that at my gym. So that opened the door. We did several podcasts together. I went on to do a talk show for Mob TV, which you can find on Plex TV. I hosted it, and I had ex-mob guys, I had ex-cops, dirty cops, FBI agents, and the stories that were told were just phenomenal. So we thought, and the only reason it stopped, and we didn't do the third season, is because my book right now, The Life, has a script written by Terry Winter. Terry Winter, for those who don't know, wrote The Wolf of Wall Street, The Sopranos, Boardwalk Empire, and part of The Tulsa King. So he is the top writer for mob stuff. He wrote the script to mine, and I could get a call at any time to go to California and start working on a series. So we couldn't lock into another season, which opened the door to this. We have this beautiful venue. It's called Capone's. Some of the partners don't like that name. Some of us do. We may change that, but right now it's called Capone's. It has an old New York, old Chicago, old school feel, as you saw. Yeah, as you saw in the pictures. And when we bring in these other guests in this atmosphere with a live audience, and hopefully you guys filming it, and I think there's an avenue for us to get this out streaming somewhere or to a TV channel, whatever connection you may have.
We want to kind of clarify that aspect because Leo and Courtney are very interested in making a TV special. And that's what we want to do is this it's a television special where folks are coming in almost like a red carpet. You come up the stairs. It's just like a speakeasy.
They're coming up right now as we speak in the background.
And I want to make sure people understand what this night in the life is all about. It is about suspending reality, taking you back in time, making you feel like you're a part of the life for this one night only. It's going to be done through music and storytelling. Far better than a movie or a play. This is going to be interactive because you're going to not only hear the stories, and I have a great rapport with Larry as he tells these stories, you're going to be able to ask questions and then mingle and hang out at the end. Larry's going to sign his book. It's going to be music. It's going to be storytelling. And anybody who knows Larry's story, it has every element of a successful entertainment product. Let's not, because your audience may not know this. Larry's story has violence, it has sex, it has intrigue, suspense. It has every element that people want to see in a successful entertainment product. Right, Larry?
Yes, and it has corruption.
Yes.
A good part of the
government
story,
corruption.
Exactly. A good part of the story is FBI corruption. You're going to hear in-depth detail about anything from beatings to murders. You'll get a bird's eye view of a real mob war, the Colombo War, the last of the Colombo Wars. And I've learned from a dear friend that we hooked back up, a friend of mine. Eventually, I'll mention his name. I don't want to do that yet, but he's been around a little bit longer than me, and he goes back to the previous wars. The Colombo family had about 3 or 4 wars. They've been fighting for the last 40 years, but ours is the war to end all wars. The families fell apart, but the detail, the treachery, the backstabbing, the hits, the attempted hits, the meetings to try to call for peace, unbelievable stories. The conspiracies, the plannings, the plans to blow people up, to maybe dress as Hasidic Jewish rabbis and walk down the street and shoot someone. Another one was to dress as nurses and wheel, a wheelchair. And my boss was the Grim Reaper. I was going to wheel him in. And at this meeting, he was going to get out of the wheelchair with 2 machine guns, Uzi, and take everybody out at the table. So, and this is endless. I mean, I could sit here and
we don't want to give away the stuff.
But the detail will come out that night.
Yeah,
and the exclusives and everything we'll save for the opening night.
Well,
all I'm going to say, Dion, is when you watch a movie, you're not part of the movie. You're going to feel like you're part of this story on this night. That's what it's all about.
And we welcome the questions at the end. That is could be an additional hour. It was usually in a live audience, and I've done the Mom Museum show, like I told you, in Las Vegas, and in a live venue like that, the questions are very good. The people are intelligent. They're not looking there to fight with you or argue with you. They're genuinely curious, and they ask very good questions. And I'll tell you what, that's a great segment.
Absolutely. So Dion, let me ask you. You know, you came into this. You're a New York guy, right? And you're coming into this kind of blind because I know you from the political world, and you're a mover and a shaker. There's no doubt. I'll just leave it at that. But hearing this, what questions do you have? Being a New York guy,
And suggestions.
Yeah, and ideas.
Well, gentlemen, in order to prep for this, I did my homework, and the question I have is this. In the African-American community, I will say myself on the ground up, there's a lot of wannabes in my realm into your realm, a lot of wannabes. And then there's a lot of overlap in our realm, like you said, Larry, before, being behind the wall, as we say, with a couple other tough guys in my realm since the drum game of the 70s and 80s. So here's my question for you. Just like Boardwalk Empire, just like The Sopranos, where does the Black community fit in this narrative? You mentioned earlier the numbers, and that would really appeal to my audience, the overlap, just like with Bumpy Johnson.
Yeah, we did business with every ethnic group. You know, in the 70s and 80s, we were the power, and a lot of these other groups worked with us. They had to work with us. My own experience, I played ball in high school and had lots of friends of color. And as I became the Lefty Rosenthal of the neighborhood, Lefty is the guy from Casino, Robert De Niro's character, the big gambling guru. I had a lot of Black friends from high school join in. We started out with the parlay cards. Then they brought in gamblers, the numbers. They were already doing the numbers, but we gave them a better deal. Whatever deal they were getting, when we told them what we were going to give them, they all jumped on board. So I was in Coney Island twice a day, different areas to pick up numbers from different runners. And again, they were Spanish, they were Black. Later on, Chinese people became very prominent in Brooklyn. 8th Avenue, they came in, they had to give the numbers to us. Things are changing now. The leadership out there isn't the same. They're not going to go in and butt heads with these other ethnic groups, but we did. So there was a lot of intermingling.
That's beautiful, Larry. Now, here's my next question pertaining to that beautiful set. Now, there's a lot of people where this element started in New York, migrated to Chicago. Now, everybody, even New York right now, is migrating to Florida. So how can both states play with each other? For example, in New York, how do you transition that lifestyle to Florida with the Cubans? Because that's always been a contentious issue as well. Can you walk us through that?
Well, the Cuban thing, I would say, is more drugs. And we, for the most part, were not supposed to dabble in that business. Not that a lot of guys didn't. They did. Some guys got killed for it. It was just too much money not to do it, you know? But as far as the Cubans, that much I never had to deal with because I wasn't in that business. But it would be the same thing. They would work together for a common goal to make money. They're going to kill each other and nobody makes money. So they would figure a way out. But again, that wasn't my business.
Yeah, and Florida also has a very long-standing history of Cosa Nostra going back to, in Tampa, particularly Santo Trafficante. And Florida is a state that's kind of divided. Tampa's a lot different than Miami.
Yeah, but it was pretty open. The state was open. As a matter of fact, we had a very serious presence in Florida. There's a TV show out right now called Gravesend, and Andrew Dice Clay plays a captain from the Colombo family. That captain is one of my best friends in the world to this day. And he was the skipper down here in Florida. Actually had a run-in with Santos Trafficante because they tried to claim the state. And come to the chase, we won the issue, and the state, we could do whatever we wanted in the state because we could do what we want in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Florida, and the rest of the world. So we had a pretty strong hold of Florida.
Okay, gentlemen, we went to the past. We're in the present. Now, Dion's going to ask you a question and take you to the future. We're going to bring in Matt's MMA realm. We're going to bring in your element of the wise guys. And where do you see the amalgamation of the fighting world, MMA world, with that lifestyle, and where it's going with the twist of the gaming gambling application? Okay, so maybe you can walk us through what the future might look like with both your realms coming together presently and going forward.
Well, I think the MMA world and the fight world just in general has always been tied in with organized crime, not always Italian organized crime. If you look at Japan and the Yakuza, and I've said this before, in Pride, the Yakuza basically ran Pride. And if you look at Carl Gotch was missing fingers, because those guys would remove fingers and I did a show with Jake Shannon on that. And I managed Phil Baroni when he fought in Pride. Phil's got his own background in the American mob with his dad, Phil Sr., and all of that, and the Gambinos. But talking about overseas in the Yakuza, their influence, and also in the United States, the history of boxing, and that's something that when I sat down with Tony Knapp, I talked about that right before he died. Went all the way back to his dad, to Jimmy Knapp. He used to run all the boxers. So there's always been
always an influence.
Influence.
And can I say something?
Yeah.
The reason is gambling.
Yeah,
goes right back to that. You're going to be betting on these fighters. If a fighter becomes 25-0 and gets a good name and he's a good-looking guy and he has charisma, like a lot of fighters we know, he's going to be fighting for millions and millions and millions of dollars. Wherever that is going to be, organized crime is going to be. And again, it doesn't have to be Italian only, though we were very prominent in that throughout the 60s,
absolutely.
70s. Al Serta was a big name back in the day, and I mean, we could go on and on. You could go on and on.
Punch, Dion. Have you ever seen the movie Phantom Punch?
No, not really.
No, you should watch that movie.
That Ali?
It was the Phantom Punch with Ali and Liston, Sonny Liston. And Liston was a mob
Right,
fighter.
like
But he wasn't the only mob fighter. I mean, if you want to get into boxing.
Even in the Rocky movie.
Yeah.
The Rocky movie, they had the gangster that was coming around looking for a Rocky all the time,
Yeah. And a lot of guys that were on the street and collecting. I mean, one of my best friends is in a Mexican prison right now, is Baroni, Phil Baroni. And, he was collecting when he was wrestling at Hofstra, get stabbed up in the back of the head. He almost died, that whole story and the whole thing with his dad and the Gotti Jr. trial. So, I mean, there's always been kind of a commingling between fighters, because who are you going to get to collect? Not that I would ever do this, but if I was going to put loans out, who would I want to have to collect? It would be my fighters, and guys from affiliated gyms. You want people to collect that can intimidate.
Right. So here's my deep introspective question for Larry. There's always the fork in the road in the origin story. If you could go back in time to that fork in the road where you could have went this way, but you went this way into lifestyle, what would you tell that young Larry back then?
It's easy to say I would go the other direction because I understand all the realities of the life that I didn't know at the time. I learned. Okay, I learned about the treachery, the backstabbing, the distrust among guys that are supposed to be brothers. So it's easy to say I would go, but I won't say that because there was also a lot of good things about the life. The neighborhoods were better. I was proud of that people would come to us before they went to the police for help. So there's a lot that I wouldn't change. And if I change my path, I wouldn't be right here, right now. I wouldn't have my son. I wouldn't have my wife that I have now. I wouldn't have the friends. I wouldn't have Matt. Everything that I am now is a culmination of what I went through in my life. So I wouldn't do it any different. There are things I would do different, but I wouldn't. I can't say I'd be a hypocrite to say I would go the other way. But my advice to a young kid would be, you don't need this life to earn a living because most of the guys are broke. I was an earner, okay? and I learned how to kill. So I became both an earner and a killer. But the more important thing to me about that life was to earn. Okay, and I put together businesses, lumber businesses, sports businesses, gambling, horses, shylocking. I lent money out and collected huge interest. But most of them aren't. You don't need it. I'm not in that life anymore, and I'm earning a better living than ever. Okay, and the last thing is you don't need that life to get respect. I get as much respect now and more because it's not based on fear of this organization I'm with. They respect me as a man. So you don't need the life or these gangs, little gangsters in the street. They don't need it to make money or for respect. They're making a mistake. Listen to your parents, go to school and study and be a doctor, a lawyer, a fireman, a cop, anything. You don't need it. That's the mistake. But for me to say I would change, I'm giving up everything, everybody in my life, my family, my kid, my wife, my new friends. So, no, I'm glad I took this route and I'm where I'm at.
Well, like a sports
Dion, I wanted to interject because I've said this to you before. You're from the world of politics, and you and I both with law and politics. I've had my hands in that for quite a while now with law firms, with Berman and so forth. And let me tell you this, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The most powerful and effective organized criminal organization in the world is the United States government.
That's right. And so this is a closeout question for both of you fine gentlemen. I don't want to take up too much of your time. You got things to do and money to be earned. This goes to both of you. Matt, start, and then we'll end with Larry with closing remarks. You both have books. You're both authors. Many young fans come up to you, or just fans in general, to get an autograph. What is the one question you would say a fan came up to you to ask you that was very good, and how did you answer that for your book signing? We'll start with Matt.
Wait, I could need you to clarify that because I didn't quite understand.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, you both have book signings. You're both authors in respective realms. All right, so when you experience a book signing, right, and someone comes up to you, remember, what was one interesting question you were asked, and how did you handle it from your book signing?
Oh, well, I mean, with me, with the Rough and Tumble book, which is my most popular book, it was how in the hell did you end up training with two carnies, two actual guys that came out of take on all comers from the carnivals? Because everybody knows jiu-jitsu, but I actually learned directly, and I always answer that question this way. So, I was a lifelong grappler, and I stumbled into the gym where Billy Wicks was, which was the Western Carolina Barbell Club, and started training with those guys when I was in Asheville, North Carolina for work. And I saw all the old carnival pictures on the wall, and I was like, man, this is interesting. And I've done so many interviews on this in the combat sports world, in the fight world. And he saw me riding this Mexican kid. And, from wrestling, riding is, you're on top of the guy and you're riding him. And I had my hooks in, and I was really punishing this kid. I was knuckling him in the eye socket and in the jaw. And he goes, this old guy comes up to me and he goes, man, you were really hurting that kid. He goes, where did you learn that stuff? And I said, I had a couple savage wrestling coaches that taught me dirty wrestling. And then I come to find out that he was the guy who was the head of the gym, and he came out of the world where they took on all comers and the carnivals. So I fell into that. And then he introduced me to Frankie down in Florida. Frankie, talk about a gangster. I mean, you could read the book that Scott Teal did about Frankie. He wasn't with Cosa Nostra, but I mean, he ran every racket you can imagine. And he had the strip club in Fort Walton. He's got a great book that Scott Teal wrote, Frankie Kane, the Great Mephisto, and he taught me a lot of submissions too. So that was how I fell into it. And then going out to train with Eric Paulson at Combat Submission Wrestling was where Eric and I just tipping them back after practice. That's where we got the idea for the book. And that's a book that is considered a landmark book in combat sports because it's the only book that is the definitive history of grappling and how grappling's roots began and how it influenced everything from UFC to WWE. And it's called Rough and Tumble, and it's been out. I still get royalty checks from that book. We still sell that book. It's an iconic book in the fight world, mostly for fighters and grapplers, not for fans too, but mostly for competitors. And I still get people buying that book. And you can, Larry knows, you get blocked all the time and you don't want to be, so I changed the name, Matthew Granamania King. So you can go on Matthew Granamania King. And if you message me, I can send you an autographed copy of that book. And I'll give you a fanciful autograph as well.
Nice.
No, thanks, Matt. That makes you the cream king in your benevolence of the crown. So, Larry's question, someone came up to you.
I got it.
Same question that you asked, and then close us out of what these guys can expect when they get signed in the future.
Okay. If we do the show, if and when, I think we'll likely do a show with you guys here. You're going to see a bunch of interesting questions. From you don't know my story completely yet, but why do you think the boss allowed you to sleep with his wife? I have my opinions on that, but it's not, there's a lot of possibilities to that. The one question I get a lot, people say, you seem to be a nice, regular guy. How did you kill someone? How could you kill? It's a great question. And I had to give that thought over the years because I'm doing this a long time. And the real question is this. Because anyone can kill under certain circumstances. And I like to say that, if you believe in God and the 10 Commandments, he said, thou shalt not kill. He didn't say thou shalt not kill unless you're in the army or unless he didn't make any exceptions, is what I was taught. So if I was in the army and I was shipped off to Afghanistan at 18, 19 years old, and I'd be killing other soldiers, that would be okay. I'm taking lives. And the type of person I am, I think I would have elevated. I think I might have been a sharpshooter, or I might have been a Navy SEAL, something. I wouldn't be happy just being a soldier. I always wanted to be the best. So it's the reason to kill. The reasons I did it, most people won't agree to. The guy broke a rule in our life. He was selling drugs. My boss says, we got to take him out. We go kill the guy. Yeah, public isn't going to understand that, but it's our life. When I wound up in the war, I had absolutely no remorse for what went on. They threatened to kill me. They came after me. They shot at me and my boss and my partners. We just got them first. It was kill or be killed. So I was in that position. I was in the life, and I did what I had to do. If I was in Afghanistan and my sergeant said, go take out those people, and innocent people got hurt too, is that okay?
Yeah, and I'll say this too, Dion, what I said earlier, in organized crime, it's not like they're killing random people.
Right.
They're killing people within the life. Now, if you look at what's going on in the world right now, I don't want to get into world events or politics. There's a lot of innocent people being mowed down and wars. So
I want to add
what Larry's saying is very true.
And I did a podcast last night where this came out. Do you know how many times we had to do something like that, and we were more mad at the guy that got killed for putting us in that position? He knew better than to shoot a wise guy in another family. He should do better. You did this. Why did you do this? Now look what we have to do. But again, it's the life. The rules are there for a reason, but they're all broken. But again, that's a tough one for me to answer. So I try to put it. It's not the act. If somebody was bothering your family or hurting your daughter or your wife, most people, they kill them. If they have a gun, they're going to stop whatever's going on. Most people, probably 99 out of 100, would do whatever they had to do to protect themselves. The reasons, that's the problem. I have no justice. I can't argue that. I can't justify it other than it was the life we were in, and we all agreed to it.
But I want to go back to what we're talking about here, which is a night in the life. And this is what makes this such an epic night of entertainment, is that Larry can get into detail and tell these stories about hits. And when you're watching a movie like let's just say, for example, you know, one of the iconic movies, Goodfellas, right? You're watching a movie that was loosely based on Henry Hill. They had to change all the names. Here, you're meeting with and talking to the actual person who is involved.
Right.
And it's a whole nother
and
level.
you're not over dramatizing.
Yeah.
Like TV, it's all over. They overact. The explosion in the car is over, you know, zealous. The car goes flying. None of that really happens.
Well, that's good, gentlemen. I must say I'm impressed because normally, if you remember, like me as a kid, you know, names must be changed in order to protect the innocent. And so everybody's going to get a good time with you guys. I already foresee it, and the reality will sink in directly from the mouth and the source. So thank you, gentlemen, for being on. Hopefully, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, let's try to come up with, if you guys still want to come down and set up your cameras and do some live shows, just get us some dates and we'll make sure this place is prepared.
Yeah, so because we know that Leo and Courtney are ready to roll, and we want to get them down here, and we'd like to go out to dinner with you guys too. Whether Larry and I maybe come up to New York and do it beforehand, but we definitely want to set a date for this first show because I'm telling you, it is going to be an awesome night of entertainment.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen, for believing in a Black-owned, service-disabled-owned business and giving us opportunity to work together. All right, guys, want to have a good evening, fun show, book writing. Thank you guys for standing by.
Thank you so much.
Dion Powell, your community consultant, and we're out. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to play us out with the music again as we panorama. Okay, gentlemen? All right, thank you for your time. Okay, I'm going to
Thank you.
with this beautiful music of this beautiful venue.
What the?